Hi, my name is Sahir Jahan, and this is my screencast for individual assignment two. So, first of all, I want to go over the user stories that I implemented and the ones that pertain to input validation and the ones that input pertain to the actual application. So, the first user story is as a student, I can ask questions and receive a list of potential answers so I can benefit from the suggestion of others. Um, so, this satisfies like the read requirement in CRUD. And basically, what I want to do is I want to set up a like uh, like a screen which will show all the posts for the user. As a student, I could see my list of unresolved questions, the number of unread potential answers received, so I don't have to scan unrelated messages. Again, this is another read requirement. This is a little bit more specific and a little bit more detail oriented. But basically, for this one, I wanted to implement in that screen, I wanted to implement something that would filter posts so that you could see your read and answered messages and unread messages. Um, and then as a student, I could see a list of unresolved questions and a list of the current potential answers for each, so I can evaluate the potential answers and, if appropriate, propose new potential answers that duplicating the work of others. Well, this is the read as well, so you could see any answers to the questions. And this is also create because you can create your responses. And this allows you to reply to questions, which I also implemented into that feature as well. As a student, I can produce a new question based on previous questions to address the feedback I've received and any insights it gained, so I'm more likely to get an answer that resolves my issue. This would, again, satisfy the create requirement. You can create any questions you want, plus you can create replies to questions, so really anything. Um, and yeah. And as a student, I could search to find answered questions, currently unanswered questions, and reviewers, so I can get so I can more quickly get my questions answered and create an effective set of reviewers to curate the results of my searches. So obviously, I didn't implement the reviewers part yet, since we don't have to implement that. That's not our part of CRUD. But again, you can view unanswered questions and answered questions, and then also these last four user stories relate to actually your input validation um, and other requirements. So students should be able to modify their posts and replies. This was something I felt was necessary, even though it wasn't a part of the user stories document. I felt this was very necessary. You should be able to modify your posts and replies, and this is the update requirement in CRUD. Students should be able to delete posts and replies they have made. This is again the delete requirement in CRUD. And then these are the input validation ones. So post and replies made by students should not have a limit, but should be longer than 5 characters. I felt that incorporating this was very useful because if your post is less than 5 characters, it's most likely not going to be decipherable and readable by the reviewers, and it most likely won't have a question that's um, uh, of any use. So it'll just clutter the space, and it just doesn't make much sense to have like a one word question. Um, and then post and reply should be sanitized and protected for potential SQL injections. Well, I already have a prepared statement to process all of your SQL for all your SQL statements, but this adds an extra layer of security, which I feel is necessary. So you basically want to process any potential SQL keywords and things of that nature. Okay, so now that we went over the user stories, I think we can go over the testing. So let's first go over answer validation. So for this one, I have 6 different tests. So the first one is a perfectly fine test. This one basically is a positive case. The rest are negative cases because I just wanted to see what a negative. Actually, sorry, number 6 is not a negative case, but it does have a little bit of twist. So the first one is fully positive. There's nothing twisted to it. It's just good answer. It meets the length requirement. It's more than 5 characters, and yeah, it's good. And I just tested this. A response from actually the professor, which is like realistic, right? And then for this one, I did a short answer. Nope. You can see that this just doesn't make much sense, and that's why I have it less than 5 characters. Um, this second one, this third one is this basic SQL injection, and again, it should detect SQL keywords and turn in an error. This one is your comment injection. So if there's any comments that you try to inject, it also detects that. This one's an empty answer, and this one is special characters. It should keep special characters, even though they are SQL character, they are found in SQL. It should still keep them because there's no SQL keywords. Now, if we run this, you can see that all the tests have passed. Um, so input validation is good. It covers for answers and replies, it covers the five character limit, and also it sanitizes any SQL keywords. As you can see, for your basic SQL injection, it sanitizes it so that it kind of it gets rid of the characters that are necessary for the SQL injection to occur. So it no longer has that type of asterisk that you would need to make that SQL injection occur. Um, and then comment injection, um, it gets rid of that apostrophe so that it doesn't stop reading at that. It reads the whole thing as the user input. Because SQL injection is that apostrophe, it reads up until then, and then it uses the rest as an SQL, and then it executes this command, which is bad. So it just gets rid of that. So the whole thing is just deemed as input, and the rest are pretty self-explanatory. Then we have your question validation test. Let's exit out of console. Okay. And then basically for this one, um, let me see. Yeah. So for this one, we have a little bit more testing because there's a couple more because you have a title and you have your input. So for this one, this is a fully valid input. This is a too long of a title. This is a 101 character title. Um, and by the way, for the logic is the same for both of them. It's basically where you have your testing. This is necessary because this returns a sanitized title only if there is an SQL injection. If there's no SQL injection, it doesn't sanitize it. Sanitization basically gets rid of any of the special characters, but I don't want to get rid of special characters if there's no SQL injection. We'll discuss that when we go over the other code. And then this is the validate result, which is basically if the title has any of these characters. Um, if the SQL injection has any of these characters, then it would not be it would not be a valid result, basically. Okay. Yeah, basically this is run through and this parameter basically sees if there should be any errors passed. This is the actual content. This is a description, and this is the error that should be passed. So for this one, there's no error. For this one, title's too long. For this one, there's SQL injection in the title. For this one, there's an empty question, so it should tell you that you have to like input actual something in the question. This is a short question, too short. Again, you could see how short questions are pretty detrimental. They don't really mean much. You really can't do much with 5 characters. SQL in question, it'll get rid of the semicolon. Um, then this is you have multiple errors. I just wanted to see if it can produce an error message for 2 or more errors. And yeah, this one has 150 character title, which is too much, and this is an empty, and it does. Um, Max title length. This is like the edge case where this is a valid input, and it's an edge case because it has 100 characters in the title. And this is just a realistic comment, which I just copy and pasted from that discussion. Um, then min question length. Um, yeah, this should return a error because the question length is 4. And special characters, it shouldn't sanitize the special characters. We can run this to see if it works. And yep, all tests are passed. Doesn't sanitize any of the characters. And yep, it works. Just good. Okay, now let's go over the actual code. And then at the end, I will show how this all works. So I'll make it brief so that it's not too much. Okay, so for the answer class, this handles the UI component of any of the posts. So you need an answer handler, which handles the database components and the post ID. So basically, for right answer, this method handles the entire portion for when you go to when you want to write a question, it'll actually handle the whole thing. Here you could see there's a text area for typing your question, there's a text area for title, and there's actually a label which has your character count. Um, and it'll turn orange when your character it'll be orange until you hit your character limit. And for the it'll turn red when you hit the character limit for the title. Um, then you have the show method, which actually this basically shows your um like your replies. So like for you'll see for each like post, there's like a answers button. And this is basically where it shows your the full list of replies for each answer. Um so this is the edit screen. So you could this allows you to edit your answer. You could see like um this is the button to save the changes for the editing. This actually creates the layout, and this actually retrieves the answer content that's currently in there, so that you don't have to just start from afresh. It allows you it saves the content and allows you to edit the current content. For the show, there's base yeah the show this creates all the baselines. So it creates the border pane, which is the border for each answer. And I wanted it to be scrollable, so this was necessary for creating the border for every single answer. And I also need to create a scroll pane. Um, and then this is the edit screen, and this is the alert. So basically, there's an alert shown whenever you successfully submit an answer or you successfully modify an answer. And there's also alert shown if there's some sort of mistake. Um, yeah. And we can then go to question.java, which is the UI component for all the posts that you make. So this is obviously your constructor and show question submission scene. This sets up the submission of your question. So it has your title components, and um, it also has your question components. I'm sorry, I think for answer.java, I actually said that there was title components. This is just the answer. So you don't submit titles for your answer. So it's just the answer. There's no title components here. The title components for question.java. Um, question.java, you could see like it has the exceeds 100 characters. I added a nifty feature where if they exceeds length 100, it makes it red. And then if it is less than 5, it makes it orange. Um, and then basically, um, what happens is this just basically sets up the whole thing. So this is the submit button, and it shows the errors accordingly. Then the show post, this basically is your drop-down menu. And you can select show all posts, show read posts, show unread posts, and show unanswered posts, and it will refresh the page to show those posts. And this is the refresh post button, um, which basically every single time you select one of those, it gets the filtered result set from question handler, and then it posts it. Um, so that whenever you press the button, it gets automatic response. This is the get filter result set. So for question handler, it has all of these methods which actually get the posts according to whichever one you want. Border pane, as I discussed with the answer, the border pane is necessary because it creates the individual pane and border for every single question. And these questions are um, basically like so that it creates it and then you can also scroll through it and make sure that there's like a difference between each question. And also the border pane is necessary because it allows you to modify like incorporate buttons into the question, which is really necessary. And this is why you can see like the title label, the text area, the user label, and the content box. And this is the setup action buttons. So the setup action buttons are what will be basically in the content box. You can see that there's the reply button, the answer button, and only if you are the owner of the post, then you can modify it using the delete button and edit button. And then this is the show edit. So this is the editing logic. It's very similar to answer, so I'm not going to go over that. Um, and this is the hover tracking. So the hover tracking is interesting because if you hover over the question for more than 5 seconds, as you can see here, then it will mark the post as read and it'll add the post to each user's read read posts, which is in user handler. I couldn't implement that into question handler because that's not really possible because then you'd have to create a list of users that read it, and I feel like it was easier to just incorporate that into user handler. Um, this is the delete post logic. Um, I have a method in question handler that handles this, and this is the show alert and return homepage. Very similar as well to answer handler. So for user handler, what this does is it creates a table and um, like it adds it adds post read. So whenever a user reads a post, which is hovers over for 5 seconds, question calls this method and it basically adds to the user that added it, as you can see the username feature, the post ID of the read um, of the post that the user had read, and it inserts it into the SQL. The thing is into the SQL database, but you can't just add it because you have to append it. So this basically is the append logic for that. And this is the get read post. So this basically returns a list of integers because each post ID is an integer, and it returns a list of integers that that the user has read. And yeah, that's basically what this does. As you can see, it's just returns post read and it splits it using a comma. So that just basically because each integer is stored each post is stored as a post ID, comma, post ID, comma. So it basically splits it according to the comma. So it'll create a list and then it'll exclude the comma. And the comma is every single element. And then yeah, this is just a user exist. So does the user even exist in the first place for you to be selecting post ID from? And let's go to question handler. So question handler, basically this is the SQL injection patterns. So these are all the suspicious characters that can appear and the keywords that appear. So it creates a table with these characteristics or these columns. So when you add a post, obviously you need to know who added the post, the title of the post, and the actual content of the post. And it basically just inserts the post into the table using a pretty basic SQL injection. And prepared statements are very important because it prevents from SQL injections. But the thing is, I also wanted to add included protection. That's why I added the input validation stuff that I discussed earlier. Um, and then get all questions. I wanted to get all questions so that I have a method so it can display all questions. It basically just, and then also get the number of replies. Basically, for the method, uh, for the question page, the drop-down menu, it shows answered questions. This is pivotal because if get number replies, I basically set the logic where if get number replies for the post ID is greater than 0, that means it is answered, and therefore it should display. Um, delete post by ID. This is again pretty relatively self-explanatory. Increment number replies. Again, this is explanatory. This just increments the number of replies every single time a reply does happen to the post. Uh, get answered questions. Again, this just gets it from where number replies is greater than 0. Get read questions. It basically returns. It gets the read post IDs, and it sees the result set of post IDs that are actually like that. And it uses the user handler to get this read post IDs. Um, get unread questions is the same, except you just do the opposite, where you pick the ones that aren't read. Get a post content by ID. Basically, I wanted to be able to extract the post content with ID. It's just again a simple SQL command. Update post. Yeah, you can usually you can literally just use the update keyword in SQL to do that. Get post title by ID. Again, get the title by ID this time. This would So this returns validate question. So again, for validate question, there are multiple checks that you need to make. There is the title length is greater than 100, um, if the question is empty or not, and also the SQL injections. And it returns a list because it basically adds each of these error messages to the list if the error message is valid, and then detect SQL injection. Basically, what happens is if the pattern or keyword is in the SQL, it is in the input, let's say, then it'll return true. And if it's not, it'll return false. So that's why I used if the for every single pattern in SQL injection, if it is in the input, then you return true. And sanitize input, yeah, basically you want to replace all those things with empty character. Then we have answer handler. So answer handler, I'm not going to go over the SQL and the input validation stuff because it's very similar to the other one. Um, but answer handler, that's just the validation stuff. Add answer, it's very similar to add post. Get replies by post ID. Again, it's really similar. These are really similar. Um, delete reply by post ID. Delete reply by ID. I wanted to do this so that when you delete a post, it will delete every single reply that is next to it. So it'll delete the whole thing. So it's helpful to delete it by post ID there. And delete reply by ID. When you want to delete an individual reply, this is what is used. Get reply content by ID, pretty self-explanatory, and update reply. Again, it's very similar to question handler.java. Start CSE360. This basically just connects to the database and sends you to student homepage. Student homepage gives you two options. It's either submit a question or view all questions. And database helper, it basically just creates the connection. So now that I've explained the user stories and the test cases and the code and the actual documentation, I could discuss how I could show the actual product and how the application works. So let's press go. Okay, so here's a starting page. You can enter your username. I'll just put my name for now. And then let's submit a question. So for the title, let's just do like something like HW2 help. And then I'll say what user stories are required for this assignment. Something like that. And let's say that's my question. I submit that. Cool. Question's been submitted. Nice. Let's display all posts. Okay, so you can see the post and you can see the edit and delete screen. So let's edit it. So let's say HW2 help and let's just edit it to where I changed it like this for this project instead of assignment. And let's just save changes. And you can see that it saved the changes. And you can also choose to delete your post. We can show the functionality of that, post deleted. Okay, so now let's log back in. Um, Let us submit a question again, and I'll just for this one, I'll just say submit gibberish. Um, let's display all posts. Cool. Here I can reply to my own post. This is gibberish. Um, Submit that. Cool. Answer's been submitted. I could see the answers. But first, let's show this. I can hover it over it. I can hover over it for some time, so for 5 seconds. I could see. Look, mark post 2 as read. Okay, cool. I can go to read posts. I can go to unread posts. Nothing because it's unread. And I can go to answered posts. Um, so answers, this is gibberish. So this is answered. Cool. Um, Now, last functionality, I want to log in as, let's say, Superman. Go. And let's say display all posts. You see the delete and edit buttons do not appear because you don't want to be able to delete and edit someone else's post. Um, I can reply, say, why is this gibberish? Um, I can submit answers and I can choose to do that. And actually, one last thing as well. Let's log back in as myself. Um, if I make a reply and I just press, let's say like, nope, I submit, it's forward. It's not gonna let me submit. And let's make a post as well. Let's say I exceed the character limit for the title. I'm gonna do random characters. And I do a blank. Two errors pop up. Let's say I make the title acceptable. And let's say I just do four characters, at least five characters. And if I do a cool question submitted. So that shows my UI on my application and how my application works. And that should be it for the video. Thank you for listening.